All right. Hey guys, today we're going to Patrick Baptist. They are off of East Malloy Bridge towards Ferris. And today I'm here with, of course, myself, Nathan, and joined by our buddy Dalton.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, we're going to get a couple interviews for you guys. Tyler and Shea Poole, they are the pastor and the pastor's wife. So we're going to just show y'all around Patrick Baptist.
That fact. Evil things do happen, but I am going to give a response and kind of answer why evil things happen. The second point that he kind of goes from there is God is not doing anything to stop it. If God is real, He's not doing anything to stop evil. He's just letting it go on, and there's something wrong with that. And of course, his final point being our laws should not be based on God's commands. So I'm going to give a response to all three. Things happen because of sin. Because of sin. When we think about that God is not doing anything to stop it, is that true? I actually don't think it is. Go on to that point number 2 there, Charles, if you got it. God has done something to stop evil. God has done something to stop evil. Before I tell you what it is that He's done, let's talk about some solutions here. Okay, so if a person says, I can't bring myself to believe in God because there's evil in the world, the question that you should ask them is, okay, let's say you were God. What would you do about all the evil in the world? Is anybody in here, if you're God, this is your first option. You can create a perfect world and remove man's free will. That's option number 1. Most people don't like that one. And I know I wouldn't want to do that. Okay. Option number 2. Here's option 2. God creates a perfect world, but then gives man free will and allows sin to ruin it. And then He does nothing. That's option 2. Is God gives you free will and says, oops, can't do anything now, you messed it up. I guess I'm just going to watch the world burn and do nothing. That's what most people think Christians believe. That's not what we believe. There is a third option. Here's the third option. God creates a perfect world, allows man to sin, but then has a plan to save the world. Amen. Wait, I like that one, because God allows us to have freedom of choice, but He's going to have a plan to save and heal the world from the bad choices. I'm in for that. Yeah. God defines it as, and that includes lying, cheating, stealing, fornication, lust, all the things that we've all been guilty of. Okay, so in order for God to stop evil, He has to literally remove every single one of our free wills or just kill us. Wait a second. That doesn't sound very great. I don't like that after all. Wait a second. Hold on. Can we just have a solution where maybe I keep my free will, but then God only stops some evil? Maybe God just stops the sin that I'm not guilty of yet. But remember, the sin doesn't start with your hands, it starts in here. You can't just say God stopped the murderers, He has to stop hate too.
Amen.
Our culture thrives on hate right now, doesn't it? Oh, we love hate. We love to hate. The final point that he made in the video is we shouldn't be basing our laws off of, religion. Right? Because if God is real, well then He's either not powerful or He's evil, so even if He was real, we still shouldn't listen to Him. But if He's not real, then, of course, definitely, we shouldn't be basing our laws on religion. But let me make this point tonight. Breaking God's law will produce more evil. It was the breaking of God's law in the first place that got us into this mess. The idea that therefore nowadays, since, everybody has their own beliefs and everybody has their own religion, that we have to have laws that are neutral, that everybody can agree on. No, the law's not neutral. What is the law except to tell people what is right and what is wrong?
So I'm here with Shea Poole. How you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Okay. So just to start off, can you just kind of tell us what kind of ministries you do here at Patrick Baptist?
Yeah, so I and my pastor's wife, Tyler Poole, is my husband. And so I help with youth ministry. I also help with helping with the children on Wednesday nights. I am an artist, so I'll help with any artistic things related and kind of just be a person to fill in on things. And I also lead the women's Bible study on Sunday nights. So I kind of do a lot of different things, but that's what it is with a small church.
All right. And just, like you say, you're doing a lot of stuff. When and how did you know you were called in for ministry?
Yeah, so that actually started when I was in high school. I had a mentor and her husband who just really poured into me and my family. And whenever I was in high school, I kind of was like, I want to do that with my future husband. And so it kind of started in high school for me. And then when I found out, when I met Tyler, he was just starting to be a youth pastor here. And I was like, sold. Sold. So it started in high school for me. Yeah.
And being in so many ministries, you're gonna have to keep coming up with ideas to keep just people engaged and coming back next week. So what kind of ideas inspire you?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with what are people wanting to hear. So we'll ask them like, what are you interested in, and what is inspiring you. So we'll start with that, and then we also um, do a lot with seeing what's going on the news and and Christianity today, and so we kind of stay in those times and. It really comes down to just knowing your congregation and knowing what they're wanting to learn and kind of going from there.
And being in so many ministries, I know you have a lot of high points, but to you, what is your highest point in ministry so far?
Becoming a pastor's wife. I feel like that's the highest point for sure. Didn't expect that at 24, but God has plans for that. So, yeah.
All right, and just doing ministry, like we were talking about, there's a lot of highs, but there's also a lot of low points. In those low points, what do you kind of turn to, whether it's a Bible verse, advice, to kind of just get you through the hard times?
So definitely comes to pursuing my personal relationship with God. If I don't have that on a daily basis, then I really do struggle because He's the one who fills my cup, and that's who helps me to pour into other people. So if I'm not filling my cup with God first, then I'm not going to be able to pour into anything else. And it's through that overflow that I can pour into other ministries and other people. So my personal relationship with God, reading His Word every day, that's what fills me up.
And just to end it off, what's kind of the best advice you can give for someone new to ministry or, a pastor's wife?
Mm, well, that's a hard one since I just became a pastor's wife. But I think the biggest thing is, pursue your personal relationship with God, number one. And then surround yourself with mentors who've been in the ministry for years that can help guide you and pray over you and give you wisdom. And yeah, I think those are the main two things: relationship with God and good mentors. So
Keep it simple now.
yep.
Well, I thank you for your time, Shay.
Yeah, sure thing.
Welcome, guys. We're here at Patrick Baptist with the pastor Tyler. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. How about you, man?
I'm doing good. I'd like to thank you for the time today to ask you a few questions. How long have you been a pastor here at Patrick Baptist?
All right. So officially, in terms of being the head pastor, it has only been 2 months. So I'm actually a newborn at this. But in terms of my ministry experience, I've been the youth pastor for 5.5 years before I was pastor here for 2 months.
Could you give me a little bit of background info or just a little bit of your testimony that led you to become a pastor here at Patrick Baptist?
Yeah, so when I was getting into college, I had no plans of going into full-time ministry at all. I wanted to own my own business, be a graphic designer, and just kind of cruise on by, have a nice, easy job. And when I got into college, I had the opportunity to take over the youth ministry. Our youth pastor left, and our head pastor at the time came to me, my grandfather, and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, well, I can. So I was doing it more out of obligation to the church, making sure that the youth had a youth ministry. But then over the years of me serving in it, I realized very quickly that this wasn't just a volunteer thing for me. This was truly a passion. I loved being in youth ministry more than being at college, more than working a regular job. And so When I finally graduated college, that's where I really knew that youth ministry or just being in ministry, it's going to be a long haul thing for me. Whether it was just something I do in addition to a full-time job or whether it does become my full-time job, I knew God was calling me to it. And so then, of course, my grandfather announced he was going to be retiring as the head pastor. And so then a lot of people in the church just kind of came to me and like, hey, so you're next, right? And I'm like, I don't think so. I got to think about that before I say yes. And so over the period of several months, almost a full year, I really wrestled with that, reading over the qualifications of what it takes to be a pastor. And I really nitpicked myself to death, thinking of all the reasons to say no, because I saw my grandfather be the head pastor for 30 years. And I knew how much of a toll it takes on a man to do it. And so my initial answer was no, because I don't feel peace. And all the people in the church just kept coming back to me and saying, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I'm like, yes, I'm sure. I don't feel peace about it. I'm not going to say yes unless I feel peace. And just through many, many different incidences, the Holy Spirit worked it out. I kept rereading those qualifications, and I realized, and some other godly men in my life pointed out, I was disqualifying myself, not because God disqualified me, but because I was basically looking down on myself because of my own age. I was saying, well, I'm 26. What is a 26-year-old going to teach a 50-year-old who already has grandkids? And so anyway, so I had to realize that I was disqualifying myself based upon my age, whereas the Bible itself doesn't do that. The Bible itself, God does not disqualify a man because of his age. It qualifies him on the basis that he has been approved of his peers, and that he's saved. And I had so many adults in the church, I'm talking elderly men, come to me and say, brother, I don't care about what you're saying. I look up to you. And that made me go, wow, God is using me in ways I didn't even realize, And so eventually I got to that place of having peace. And I came back to the church and I said, look, I'm putting my name in the hat. Now y'all got to vote, you got to vote. And if the vote doesn't pass, then I'm not taking it. But I've come to a place of peace. And then long story now made very, very short. The church voted and it was a 92% in favor. So I did not expect that either. I thought it was going to be more 50-50, but anyway, so that's how I became head pastor.
As a young pastor, what are some of the main goals you have here at the church?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I've always seen a problem and I've wanted to fix was I hate how in youth groups too often they're a bubble. They're a church within the church. They don't know any of the other adults, and a lot of times the statistics show 70% of kids in youth group leave once they graduate college or high school. So I've always thought, how do we fix that? Because it seems like once they get out of youth group, they're like, there's nothing for me no more. I don't want to go. And so because I've been the pastor and now moving into head pastor, I had a lot of my own kids be like, so who's going to be the youth pastor now? What are we going to do? And then, they're all nervous. And so one of my big convictions is looking at the church today, I see way too much division in the body of Christ. There's too much separation. Youth ministry is its own thing. Adult ministry is its own thing. The little kids ministry is its own thing, and they don't really mingle. And so my conviction as a pastor, and one thing I've been working on with our church is, how do I get the congregation to be together more often than we're separate? And so on Sundays, we stopped doing separate children's church, regular church, and all that. We do what I'm calling family style worship. Bring the whole congregation together. We do Sunday school, but when it's time for the main service, everybody, little and up, we're together. It's been a transition. A lot of people didn't like that. Like, well, I don't want to be these snot-nosed little kids in here. But the children are becoming more mature. They're learning how to behave more like adults, which is not something they were doing before. And then on Wednesday nights, my big vision there is I want to see our adults start serving in the youth ministry and the kids ministry. Let's get rid of the adult service and let's do a kid service and a youth service, and all of the adults in our church serve so that they're getting mentored by the other adults. Me and my wife are not capable of mentoring 35 kids. But a group of 10 adults could do that. So it's thinking of ways to keep the generations of the church together so we act as one body rather than a bunch of separate bodies. So anyway, it's a big thing for me is doing that.
When organizing the events here at the church, how do you keep them inclusive and welcoming welcoming, but also keeping Christ as the main focus point?
Yeah, so a good example of this is so on Sunday nights we do men and women's Bible studies, and it's men and women of all ages. All are welcome. And so we've been doing for the men, we've been doing a study on the armor of God. And we just got to the point where we got to the end of it, which is the sword of the Spirit. You know, in today's world, we don't use swords, we use guns. So I took all the men, we had a range day. We went out to a property, we all went shooting together. And again, men of all ages, young adult, we had young adults, elderly, teenagers, you name it, show up for that. Had a great time together. Of course, it was done safely and legally, but we had a great time together, and there wasn't any need to say only this age group can be there. Mm-hmm. No, it's the only qualification is you got to be a man, and the brotherhood and the camaraderie that was there was awesome. Everybody enjoyed it. Everybody had a good time, and then we came back and learned about the armor of God, the sword of the Spirit. So, in terms of keeping a church together, in terms of when you do events and activities, I think the biggest way to keep the church body happy and healthy is, as often as you can, don't separate and segregate people by age. If you're going to do it, it makes sense to do it by male and female. There really is some drastic differences there. Women need their girl time and guys need their boy time, but try to include the younger and the older together. Let there be brotherhood between all of the men, not just some of the men. I think that's the biggest thing that's missing is you got older men who are kind of stuck in, they think they kind of look down on the younger men. They look down on the young adults and they think they're just ridiculous and don't know anything. And then you have teenage boys who don't want to be around the old adults. And then you got young adults who are in the middle and everybody's just kind of nitpicking each other, doesn't want to spend time around each other. And the only way that's going to stop is when the ages are brought together more often. And they can bond over things that they all share. And so I think men need that more. I think women need that more. And there's too much separation between the generations in church today. I really think that.
How do you keep volunteers within the church motivated and just not feeling a sense of burnout?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So one thing that since we're a smaller church, you got 75 members just about somewhere in there. I'm the only person on our church's staff that is paid full time. I'm the only person the church can afford that right now. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I find it to be my duty and obligation to work my butt off so people who are volunteering don't have to. Mm-hmm. I want to take on every responsibility I can take because I'm the one that's getting paid. Mm-hmm. The church is paying me. So if anybody's going to work more than they're getting paid, it ought to be me as the leader of the church, so that when people are coming in to volunteer, it's truly volunteering. Like, hey, I'm going to help out for an hour or two on a Wednesday night. I'm not going to be expected to have a part-time job for free. And so I've got to be willing to bear that burden as the pastor to say, if I can't afford to pay you, I'm not going to expect part-time effort for no pay. So I have to set the standard that if you're going to work hard, if you're going to be paid, work hard and work extra, so that those who cannot be paid are not being taken advantage of. And so that's the mentality I want to set. And so if I'm able to bring on an associate pastor who's getting paid full time, I'm going to teach him to do the same. Mm-hmm. Hey, I expect you to work at least 40 hours a week and then some, so that people who are already working a full time job and they have full families, man, they can only afford to give an hour or two, if that. Let's show respect to them because they're the ones paying us to take care of these jobs. And so we need to do our job because they're the ones that are paying for us to do it. And so don't expect of them what they expect of you. It's very different. So.
I know we're getting ready to start evening service here soon. So I just have one more question for you. As a pastor, do you have a favorite Bible verse that you cling to for strength during times of trouble?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So my favorite Bible verse for the last, 10, 15 years has been John 3:30. And it's very simple. It says, he must increase, but I must decrease. And it was John the Baptist that said it, who was Jesus' cousin. And he was a great prophet, looked up to by a lot of people. But when Jesus started his ministry, John let his disciples know Jesus is the greater prophet than me. I'm going to get out of the way because Jesus should be the center of attention. And so I want my church to understand that about pastors is we don't need more celebrities. We don't need more big media figures as pastors. We actually need men who are just going to preach the word and let that be the focus, so that when you die, the thing that people remember most is not a brand. It's not your personal Instagram accounts and how many followers you had. No, it's that you preach Jesus and that you hand down the torch to the next man in line so that he can do the same thing. And I think too many men try to hold on to the torch and make their name the big deal. And you're nothing, man, if it wasn't for God. So anyway, that's my favorite verse for that reason. I try to remind myself of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you, Brother Tyler. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you bet.